Hello and welcome to Better Than Art School. This is a short mini lecture on chromatic grays and earth colors. So this was a painting. This is a painting by one of my previous teachers named Ann Gale, and I saw her talk about her paintings, and she said in that talk that she uses chromatic grays throughout her paintings, but she can always identify the color in the gray. So she'll have a green gray, or she'll have a blue gray, or she'll have a purple gray. I think that's a really good way to think about chromatic grays. Now, chromatic grays and earth colors are both kind of a more muted way to use color, and they kind of highlight the value transitions in color, which I'll talk about in a second. All right, so if you've seen my other color lectures, I always talk about this idea that color is three-dimensional. It's the number one most important thing that artists need to know about color, so I think it's worth repeating. But basically, to pinpoint a color, to describe a color accurately, you need to talk about its hue, which is the position on the color wheel, the name of the color. You need to talk about the value, how light or dark it is, and the intensity, which is how intense that color is. Okay, so there's a lot of different greens in this, and some of them are greens moving towards yellow, some are greens moving towards blue, but they're all, greens or yellow greens or blue greens, and they're all different. And some are more intense, some are less intense, some are darker, some are lighter. Okay, so that gets this idea about a color space. And because color is three-dimensional, you need a three-dimensional volume to capture this idea. If you look at any contemporary art program, they'll use this idea here. This idea takes the color wheel a step further. So the color wheel, of course, tries to get at all the color ideas in just a two-dimensional shape, but you really need a three-dimensional space to understand it. So if you go up or down, that's moving through the value dimension. If you go around the shape, you're moving through the hue dimension, just like you would be on a color wheel. And as you move in and out of this shape, you're moving through saturation. So basically out here, it's as saturated as the color can get. As you move closer to the middle, it's getting desaturated. Okay, so that's how the color spindle works. So that's how the color shape works. All right, and so of course, the colors that I'm going to be talking about today, the chromatic grays and the earth colors, are not right off they're not right on the edge of the color wheel, not right on the edge of the color space. They're sort of in between somewhere. And especially with chromatic grays, the first thing I'll talk about, you need to mix complements. So to desaturate a red, you need to add some green to it. If you're going to take a green and use it as a chromatic green gray, you want to tampen it down with some red, okay, and then some white paint. Those two things, so mixing complements and adding some white, that's how you create a chromatic gray. Okay, so these are Ann Gale paintings again, and to talk about chromatic grays, she's great because she uses them everywhere in her paintings, but look at how you can tell this is green. It's a gray green, but it's green. It's identifiably green. Here's a blue green, or kind of a blue gray, sorry. This is kind of a lavender, kind of a violet gray. These are some yellow grays in here. Okay, so here's how you can think about a chromatic gray. Is on one end of the spectrum, you have the pure color right off the color wheel, so this of course is red, and then on the other end, you'd have neutral. Neutral is unidentifiable color, right? So it could be black, white, gray. Those are the neutrals. They have no chroma, they have no hue, they have no saturation. They're just in one dimension of color, the value dimension. Okay, so as you get in between these two ideas of a neutral and a red, they're the same value, you get something like this. You get a chromatic gray. And it's fun to see how close you can get to the neutral side and still have the color be recognizable. So this is just barely recognizably red. It is a chromatic gray, meaning it's gray with some chroma in it. That's what chromatic gray means. So it's red with some chroma. It's harder to identify as red. Maybe you'd say it's kind of a brownish or something. But especially this one here, this is a great version of a chromatic gray red because it's somewhere in between red right off the color wheel, middle gray, and it's a little closer to the middle gray. All right, so to do this, like I said, you need to master your complements. So always use complements when you're trying to desaturate a color, okay? So if you want to desaturate orange, you add some blue. If you want to desaturate red, you add some green. If you want to desaturate yellow, add some violet. And always use your complements or near complements to dampen down each other. What complements are great for is that they can do two things that seem to be contradictory. On the one end, they can ignite each other. So in other words, if you put an orange right next to a blue, it ignites the orange and makes it more saturated looking, more intense. So that's what's happening up here in this painting. And then down here in this painting, the orange and the blue are mixing together to give you a chromatic gray. And here's a really light chromatic gray mixed with blue and orange. This is a more a warmer chromatic gray mixed with orange and blue. So you see that dual role that complements have. They can ignite each other if you put them next to each other, or if you mix them together, they can desaturate each other and move your color towards a chromatic gray. Okay, so this is a great example by Kanevsky. He's using kind of blues and oranges, kind of warm blues, and he's getting this beautiful subtle transitions through kind of a reddish orange chromatic gray back here to yellowish orange chromatic gray back here, blue-green, lighter, blue-green a little darker, and then the bright oranges pop because everything else is so muted. Everything else is chromatic grays. And then this bed sheet would be mixed by blue and orange together, for example. Okay, another Sarah Speckman painting. And it just shows you how you can control a painting better if you can make grays and use grays well, because you can make the whole painting a bunch of chromatic grays and then just pop out a few colors, and instantly you have a focal point. Instantly we know where to look in the painting. So obviously here in this painting we're going to look here, because the rest of the painting is just these kind of chromatic grays, kind of lavender colors, and then you get here and it's bam, it's brighter colors. And they're still not right off the color wheel. They're still muted, but they're muted relative to, they're less muted relative to the rest of the colors in the painting. So they pop. All right, so don't confuse this with tints, tones, and shades. They're very related. They're closely related. It's a little different. So a tint is when you mix a pure color, like blue in this case, with white, you get a tint. Pure color with gray, you get a tone. Pure color with black, you get a shade. Chromatic grays aren't exactly this. Chromatic grays, you actually usually mix the complement into it. It's not enough just to mix some white or some gray or some black with a color. You actually mix some of its complement into it, and then also some white or also some gray, or also some black if you're trying to mix a darker chromatic gray, for instance. Okay, so that brings us to earth colors. And earth colors are related to chromatic grays in a way because they're not fully saturated colors, but they're different because they have a historical difference and they just look different. They're usually warmer looking, and they're called earth colors because they're right out of the earth. These are mixed from iron ore and from other minerals that you have in the earth. That's why they're inexpensive. That's why people have been using them for tens of thousands of years. And say the cave paintings or painting faces, things like that, people almost always use earth colors for that. And probably now the way that earth colors are best known is by what's called Old Master Realism, especially Rembrandt or Caravaggio or Frans Hals or Artemisia Gentileschi or some of these Baroque artists who used what we'd now call Old Master palette. These colors that they used are from earth tones, and it's because of necessity. It's because bright colors back then couldn't be synthesized, and they were way more expensive. Okay, so this is sort of necessity being the mother of invention here. And if you use earth colors well, you can create a really nice, warm, homey sense, like in this interior design. And here's some examples. I just want to show you this one idea here. So this is a Frans Hals painting. This might look like blue. It's actually black or a gray put over a warm ground. But if the whole painting is done with earth colors, black paint will suddenly look kind of bluish relative to those warm colors. Okay, just a few more examples. This is a Caravaggio on our left and a Rembrandt on our right. And this one I would say is kind of more cool earth colors, like the greens. And then this one's more warm earth colors. But both kind of harmonize the painting. They give it this kind of pleasant, warm glow to it. All right, so that's a little bit about chromatic grays and earth colors, and I'll see you back here next time.